You've seen her. Maybe you've been her. The woman who walks into a room with a bright, almost magnetic presence. The one who seems effortlessly charming, spontaneous, free. The woman who still carries a sparkle in her eyes that says, "Life hasn't touched me yet." At first glance, people admire her. They say she has youthful energy, an open heart, a wild sense of possibility. But if you look closer, really closer, you'll notice something else behind that glow. A hesitation. A restlessness. A feeling of being suspended between who she is and who she is terrified to become. This is what psychologists call the puella eterna, the eternal girl. And I want you to think seriously about this, because it's not just a poetic idea or some textbook label. It's a pattern that runs deep in today's culture, deep in the psyche of countless women, and maybe even deeper in you than you want to admit. It's the woman who lives as if life is one long rehearsal for something that never actually begins. She jumps from experience to experience, from job to job, from relationship to relationship, collecting moments the way children collect seashells, beautiful but scattered, disconnected, and ultimately empty. She has passion but little direction. Creativity but no follow-through. Potential but no grounding. She is always about to start something big, but somehow nothing ever truly materializes. And here's what's crucial, nothing about this is random. This pattern didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's woven into the fabric of modern American culture. Think about the messages women hear every single day. Stay young. Stay pretty. Stay light. Don't age. Don't settle. Don't become too serious. Don't lose your charm. Even at 40, even at 50, there's pressure to look 25. Social media makes everything worse. Algorithms reward glow, not depth. They amplify flawless selfies, not emotional resilience. They celebrate spontaneity, not commitment. So women learn, sometimes without even noticing, that their value lies in being desired, admired, followed, photographed, praised. Not in being whole. Not in being grounded. Not in growing up. But here is the dark truth no one talks about. When a woman keeps chasing this idea of eternal youth, she eventually stops growing. And when a person stops growing, they start suffering. There comes a moment, usually around the mid-30s or early 40s, when the sparkle that used to feel exciting starts to feel like a mask. The desire to keep all doors open begins to feel like paralysis. The constant jump from one beginning to another becomes exhausting, even embarrassing. And that woman suddenly realizes she's been living in motion without moving anywhere. It's like running on a treadmill. You sweat, you hustle, you push, but you remain in the exact same place. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. Does any part of this sound familiar? Have you ever felt that no matter how much you try, nothing truly solidifies in your life? Have you noticed a pattern where everything starts beautifully but fades quickly? Do you ever feel like time is moving forward but you're somehow standing still? Or maybe you look around and see other people building families, careers, communities, while you're still figuring things out, still waiting for the right moment, still not ready yet. If these questions hit a nerve, don't look away. Because the truth is painful but liberating. The eternal girl archetype isn't about being young. It's about being psychologically frozen. Let's paint a clear picture. The eternal girl lives as if life is a movie where she's always waiting for the next exciting scene, the next big plot twist, the next miracle moment that changes everything. But life doesn't work that way. Life rewards those who commit, who stay, who build, who dare to grow roots. The eternal girl avoids all of that because commitment feels like a trap, routine feels like death, responsibility feels like losing freedom. She clings to possibility instead of choosing reality. And that's why she suffers. Because possibility is infinite, but it's also empty. Reality has weight, shape, and consequence, and she's terrified of all three. Here's the deeper question: what is she really afraid of? She's afraid that choosing one path means losing others. She's afraid that growing up means giving up the fantasy version of herself. She's afraid that real love will expose her flaws. She's afraid that real commitment will demand sacrifices she doesn't want to make. She's afraid that adulthood will force her to confront her own emptiness. And the biggest fear of all? The fear that if she stops being the fun, spontaneous, magical girl, she will no longer be loved. But stop and think, how long can anyone live like this? How long can someone carry the weight of being forever charming, forever youthful, forever effortless? At some point, the performance becomes exhausting. And when it does, the woman behind the mask begins to feel invisible to herself. She realizes she's been surviving through enchantment instead of living through truth. So here is the central message of this section: the eternal girl isn't a phase. It's a psychological cage. A cage made of sparkle, charm, and possibility, but still a cage. And if you don't recognize it, you can spend decades trapped inside it. But once you see it, once you name it, you give yourself a chance to step into something far more powerful. Because behind every eternal girl, there is a queen waiting to be born. A woman who doesn't chase approval but stands in her own authority. A woman who chooses her life instead of flirting with it. A woman who builds her world instead of wandering through it. And the question I want you to carry with you is this: are you still rehearsing, or are you ready for the real thing? Are you still living as the eternal girl, or are you ready to become the woman you were meant to be? When Carl Jung talked about archetypes, he wasn't speaking in metaphors. He meant something real, forces within the psyche that shape how we behave, feel, choose, and even sabotage ourselves. And if you want to understand the eternal girl, you must first understand this simple truth: an archetype is not a personality trait. It is not a mood. It is not just how someone is. An archetype is a psychic pattern older than culture, older than religion, older than any individual life. It's a blueprint coded deep inside the human mind, and when you don't consciously work with it, it works on you. So let's bring this down to earth. In Jungian psychology, we all carry universal characters within us: the hero, the shadow, the child, the trickster. They appear in myths, movies, dreams, and especially in our behaviors. And for women, one of the most powerful of these internal figures is the Puella Eterna, the eternal girl. She is, in essence, the feminine counterpart of Peter Pan, the boy who refuses to grow up. But what Jung started, Marie-Louise von Franz took to another level. She didn't romanticize the archetype. She dissected it. She showed how the eternal girl charms the world on the outside but collapses on the inside. She showed how this woman lives not in time, but outside of time, suspended, drifting, floating in a psychological neverland while her physical life marches forward decade after decade. Think about this: the eternal girl doesn't reject adulthood because she's irresponsible or immature. She rejects it because adulthood threatens one thing she cannot bear to lose: an idealized image of herself. In Jung's language, that image is the persona, the mask we wear to be liked, admired, accepted. For the eternal girl, the persona is everything. She is the dreamer, the free spirit, the woman who is always exciting, always charming, always different from the rest. And as long as the mask stays on, she feels safe. But here's the catch: the stronger the persona, the weaker the inner structure behind it. Jung warned about this. A person too attached to their mask becomes hollow inside, because they never meet the deeper parts of their psyche, the shadow, the animus, the self. They stay shallow, fragile, dependent on constant validation. Von Franz explained it even more sharply. She said the eternal girl lives in what she called psychological time distortion. What does that mean? It means she feels like she has infinite time, infinite options, infinite chances. She believes the future will somehow save her, so she avoids anchoring herself in the present. She keeps everything open because choosing feels like losing freedom. But here is the paradox: the more options she tries to keep, the fewer real opportunities she experiences. The eternal girl collects beginnings but never commits to the middle or the end. And that is why she feels stuck. She is moving, yes, but in circles. Now let's make this practical. Jung also spoke about the animus, the inner masculine principle within every woman. Not a literal man, but the psychological function responsible for structure, focus, decision-making, grounding, and the ability to act in the world. The mature animus helps a woman build things: a career, a family, a purpose, a legacy. But in the eternal girl, the animus is childish, undeveloped, impulsive. Instead of becoming a builder, it becomes a talker. Instead of supporting her, it lectures her with grand visions, unrealistic fantasies, and endless theories. That's why the eternal girl can describe her dreams with beautiful detail but cannot take the first concrete step toward them. That's why she talks about finding herself, finding her calling, finding the right person, but years go by and nothing truly forms. Let me ask you directly, have you ever felt like you're full of ideas but unable to commit to any of them? Have you noticed a pattern where your enthusiasm burns hot but dies quickly? Do you catch yourself saying you're waiting for clarity while avoiding real choices? This is the animus acting immaturely. This is the archetype working through you instead of with you. And here's where the shadow comes in. Jung said that the parts of ourselves we reject or hide don't disappear. They go underground. They become shadow content. For the eternal girl, the shadow contains everything she fears: responsibility, discipline, aging, limitation, failure, rejection, boredom, consistency. She pushes those things away, convinced they will kill her joy. But the tragic irony is that the refusal to face them is exactly what kills her depth. Von Franz wrote something powerful: what refuses to die cannot be reborn. The eternal girl refuses the symbolic death of her childish ego. She refuses the death of fantasy. She refuses the death of infinite possibility. And because she refuses to die symbolically, she cannot evolve psychologically. She stays trapped in a loop: hope, fantasy, excitement, disappointment, escape, repeat. Always beginning, never becoming. So let me ask you another question. What if the part of you that resists adulthood isn't protecting you, it's limiting you? What if the fantasy version of yourself is smothering the real version? What if the freedom you're clinging to is actually a form of captivity? The purpose of understanding this archetype isn't to shame anyone. It's to wake you up. Jung believed that awareness is the first act of liberation. When you see the archetype, you stop being possessed by it. You stop acting unconsciously. You stop running the same script over and over. And that's why we're going deep here, not to judge the eternal girl, but to expose her. Because only when you see the mask can you choose to take it off. The truth is simple but life-changing: you are not meant to live as an image. You are meant to live as a whole human being. You are not meant to stay in psychological adolescence. You are meant to grow into your full authority. And no archetype, no matter how charming, no matter how intoxicating, has the right to keep you small. The question now is not what is the eternal girl, but where is she still running your life? Relationships are the most revealing mirror we ever stand in front of. You can hide your patterns at work, distract yourself with hobbies, reinvent yourself on social media, but in love, the truth shows up. And for the woman driven by the eternal girl archetype, relationships become the stage where her deepest fears and her brightest illusions collide. This is where the pattern becomes unmistakable. Let's start with something simple. The eternal girl wants love. Deeply. Desperately. Passionately. She dreams of connection, intensity, being truly seen. But the problem is that she doesn't want real love. She wants ideal love, cinematic love, the kind that saves you from your own insecurities. She believes that somewhere out there is a man who will understand her without her having to explain herself, protect her from all emotional discomfort, make life feel magical, and give her a sense of stability she has never been able to create for herself. She isn't looking for a partner. She's looking for a rescuer. And here's where it becomes destructive. The eternal girl falls in love with potential, not with people. She projects a fantasy onto a man before she even knows him. She creates an internal movie where he is the perfect, emotionally present, endlessly fascinated hero. But when the real man shows up, imperfect, inconsistent, human, she feels shocked, even betrayed. She says, "It's not the same anymore," without realizing that nothing changed except her fantasy dissolving. This is the moment she pulls away. Suddenly she becomes distant, restless, disappointed. She starts questioning everything: the chemistry, the fit, the timing, the relationship itself. She tells herself she needs more freedom, more spark, more excitement. But she's not escaping the relationship, she's escaping reality. Let me ask you something. Have you ever lost interest the moment things became real? Have you ever left someone because the magic faded, even though nothing bad happened, just normal life? Have you ever found yourself missing the beginning more than the person? If so, this is not a coincidence. This is the eternal girl's fear of emotional intimacy. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, responsibility, patience, and presence. It means seeing another person's flaws and letting them see yours. It means learning to stay even when things feel uncertain. And the eternal girl is terrified of this level of depth, because it requires her to confront her own inner emptiness instead of distracting herself with emotional highs. Von Franz described this pattern perfectly. The eternal girl seeks a perfect union because she cannot tolerate the imperfections in herself. She uses romance to avoid facing her own shadow. And so she constantly idealizes, then devalues. She falls fast, but she falls shallow. She confuses intensity with intimacy, chemistry with compatibility, excitement with emotional safety. She mistakes the adrenaline rush of newness for genuine connection. And when that rush fades, she assumes the relationship has failed. But it hasn't failed. It simply entered the phase where real love begins. Now, let's bring this even closer to everyday American life. Think about the culture we live in. Dating apps where you can replace a person with a swipe. Instagram stories showing couples on vacation, drinking wine by fireplaces, looking effortless and perfect. Romantic movies where the entire relationship is compressed into 2 hours of passion and montages. We've created a culture where beginnings are worshipped and everything after is considered work. So of course the eternal girl feels at home here. This culture validates her avoidance. It confirms her belief that the perfect relationship is out there, and if hers requires effort, something must be wrong. But here's the truth she never learned: relationships do not die when the spark fades. They grow. The spark is the invitation. The real relationship starts when two people choose each other not because everything feels magical, but because they see something worth building. The eternal girl never gets this far. She runs before this deeper bond can form, convinced she's protecting her freedom. But in reality, she's protecting her fear. And then there's the flip side, the partners she chooses. The eternal girl, unconsciously, is drawn to emotionally unavailable men. Why? Because they allow her to stay in fantasy. If a man is distant, inconsistent, or ambiguous, she can spend months imagining the relationship instead of actually being in one. She can project whatever she wants onto him without ever confronting the truth. It feels romantic, but it's just avoidance wearing a pretty costume. So let's ask another difficult question. Do you find yourself chasing men who are not fully present? Do you stay in situationships, half relationships, emotional maybes? Do you fall for the man who doesn't choose you clearly because it allows you to stay in the thrill of possibility without risking vulnerability? If so, that's not love. That's the eternal girl feeding her fantasy. The tragedy of this archetype is that she believes she is seeking freedom when she is actually fleeing commitment. She believes she is seeking passion when she is avoiding depth. She believes she is protecting her heart when she is preventing it from ever being fully known. But here's the breakthrough: relationships do not expose your weakness. They expose your patterns. And once you see your patterns, you have a choice. You can keep repeating the cycle, idealize, attach, retreat, escape, or you can grow into the version of yourself who can love deeply, consciously, courageously. The point of this section isn't to blame the eternal girl. It's to confront her. Because relationships are not just about connection with someone else, they are a confrontation with yourself. And if you've been repeating the same story with different faces, maybe it's time to stop looking for the perfect man and start looking at the part of you that keeps running. If you really want to understand the eternal girl, don't just look at her relationships. Look at her work life. Look at her career choices, her unfinished projects, her overflowing notebooks filled with ideas she never executed. Look at the constant restarts, the new passions, the sudden pivots, the never-ending search for something that feels just right. This is where her fear of adulthood becomes painfully visible, because nothing exposes our inner structure like the way we build, or fail to build, our lives in the real world. The eternal girl wants purpose. She craves meaning. She wants a career that feels aligned with her soul, something that lights her up, something that makes her feel chosen by destiny. But at the same time, she avoids anything that demands consistency, discipline, sacrifice, or patience. She wants the reward without the repetition. She wants the inspiration without the commitment. She wants the dream without the grind. So she lives in a constant state of searching, preparing, planning, imagining, but never landing. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever said, "I'm just waiting for the right moment," even though deep down you knew you were avoiding the discomfort of actually starting? Have you ever enrolled in a course, bought new journals or equipment, made a big announcement about a new direction, only to abandon it weeks later? Have you ever felt a surge of excitement about a fresh path, only to lose interest the moment the real work appeared? If any of this feels familiar, you are not alone. This is how the eternal girl hides her fear of commitment behind the illusion of passion. American culture makes this pattern even worse. You're told to follow your bliss, find your passion, never settle, wait until it feels right. Instagram is filled with coaches and influencers telling you that your real purpose is something effortless and magical. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Purpose isn't discovered, it's built. You don't find meaning. You create it through repetition, responsibility, and showing up even when the excitement has faded. Passion is the spark. Discipline is the engine. And the eternal girl has no engine. She relies on the spark, and when the spark dies, she assumes the dream wasn't meant for her. Marie-Louise von Franz described this with surgical clarity. She said that the eternal girl suffers from a fear of incarnation, a fear of entering the real world, the world of limits, commitments, and consequences. To her, choosing one path feels like betraying all the others. Starting something serious feels like giving up freedom. Staying in one place long enough to grow roots feels like losing her identity. She lives in a psychological bubble where everything is possible, but nothing is ever real. And this bubble has a cost. The eternal girl never feels ready because she is waiting for a feeling that doesn't exist. She believes readiness will come in the form of confidence, inspiration, or clarity. But readiness actually comes from action. You don't feel ready and then begin. You begin and then feel ready. But her inner narrative tells her the opposite. Not yet. Not this. Not now. Maybe later. Maybe I need a new idea. Maybe I need more time. She confuses hesitation with intuition. She mistakes avoidance for alignment. This leads to one of the most destructive patterns in her adult life, the refusal to choose. Choosing feels like death to the eternal girl, the death of possibility, the death of fantasy, the death of the perfect life she imagines but never lives. And because she fears this symbolic death, she stays in a perpetual state of maybe. Maybe this job. Maybe that project. Maybe this business. Maybe that city. Maybe. But maybe is not neutral. Maybe is a slow form of self-erasure. It's the quiet killing of potential through endless indecision. And while she thinks she's avoiding pain, she is actually creating a deeper pain, the pain of never becoming who she could be. Let's bring this into a relatable picture. Think about someone you know, maybe a friend, maybe a coworker, maybe you, who is always talking about future plans. They have brilliant ideas. They speak passionately about what they could do, what they want to do, what they would do if only the timing, money, confidence, or circumstances were better. But years pass and nothing changes. They're still planning. Still dreaming. Still waiting. Still preparing. And at some point, people stop believing their stories, not because the ideas weren't good, but because the execution never came. This is the tragedy of the eternal girl. She isn't lazy. She isn't talentless. She isn't unmotivated. She is terrified. Terrified of choosing wrong. Terrified of failing. Terrified of success and the responsibility that comes with it. Terrified of commitment because commitment means the end of childish freedom. Terrified of becoming a fully formed woman because she has built her identity around being the unfinished one, the potential one, the almost successful, almost ready, almost blooming. Von Franz said something profound: the eternal girl mistakes freedom for the absence of structure. But real freedom is the ability to build something solid, something meaningful, something lasting. Real freedom comes from knowing who you are and choosing your path with intention. It comes from the courage to plant your feet on the ground and say, "This is my direction." So here is the challenge this section invites you to face. What if the life you want is on the other side of a choice you've been avoiding? What if your purpose isn't waiting for you, it's waiting for you to commit? What if the version of you that feels not ready is actually the doorway to becoming the version who is? The eternal girl doesn't realize that the very thing she fears, choosing, is the cure for her anxiety. Choice creates direction. Direction creates momentum. Momentum creates meaning. Meaning creates fulfillment. No spark, no fantasy, no new beginning can replace the solidity of a life that is intentionally chosen. There is a moment in every woman's life when the mask she's been wearing starts to crack. And with the eternal girl, the mask is always bright, lightness, charm, youth, spontaneity, emotional glitter that distracts everyone, including herself. But behind that brightness lives a truth she doesn't want to face, a truth she avoids with every new romance, every new idea, every new escape. The truth is that beneath all the sparkle lies a wound. A wound so old, so deep, so carefully hidden that even she can barely look at it. You see, the eternal girl is not shallow. She is scared. And the more scared she becomes, the more enchanting she appears. Her charm is not confidence, it's camouflage. Her sweetness is not light, it's protection. Her spontaneity is not freedom, it's avoidance. And the woman who floats through life with a playful smile is often the same woman who lies awake at night feeling a loneliness she cannot name. Let's go deeper into this. The eternal girl lives in fantasy not because she's naive, but because reality feels unsafe. Somewhere in her past, often in childhood, love was unpredictable, inconsistent, or conditional. Maybe she grew up walking on emotional eggshells. Maybe she learned to rely on charm to receive attention. Maybe she was praised for being cute, agreeable, easy. Maybe she was punished for expressing anger, boundaries, or needs. Maybe she learned early that being light kept her safe and being real got her hurt. And so she created a version of herself that the world would embrace. A version that didn't ask too much. A version that didn't disappoint anyone. A version that didn't provoke abandonment. But here is the tragedy: the more she plays that role, the further she drifts from her true self. The eternal girl performs youthfulness because she's afraid that maturity means losing love. She hides behind perfection because she fears her flaws would make people leave. She runs from intimacy because intimacy would expose the emptiness she's been avoiding. She avoids commitment because commitment requires her to show up fully, and she doesn't believe she has anything solid to show. It's easy to mistake her radiance for confidence, but look closely and you'll see something else: restlessness. A kind of emotional hunger. A longing that nothing seems to satisfy. She chases new experiences hoping they will fill her. She chases new men hoping they will complete her. She chases new ideas hoping they will finally make sense of her life. But nothing lasts because nothing external can heal an internal fracture. Jung said, "What you resist persists." And the eternal girl resists time, responsibility, emotional depth, self-confrontation. She resists any situation where the illusion might shatter. The more she resists, the more the shadow grows. And this is where the pain begins to spill over into her life in ways she cannot ignore. She starts feeling like she's running out of time. She feels anxious when she sees others building stable lives. She feels ashamed when she realizes she's still living like a teenager emotionally. She feels embarrassed when she notices she keeps repeating the same patterns with different faces. And then there's the fear of aging. This is one of the most painful truths of the eternal girl archetype. Because her identity is tied to youthful charm, the natural passing of time feels like a threat to her existence. Every birthday feels heavy. Every wrinkle feels like a crisis. Every shift in her body feels like a personal attack. Not because she's vain, but because she doesn't know who she is without her youthful persona. She doesn't know how to exist as a woman, only as a girl. And when the fear grows too big, she doubles down on fantasy. She becomes even lighter, even sweeter, even more emotionally inaccessible. She becomes fascinated with spiritual shortcuts, quick fixes, instant transformations. She tells herself she just needs to manifest something different. But no manifestation practice can replace the work she refuses to do, meeting her shadow. This is the part of her that carries the truth she has been running from. The shadow holds the grief of never feeling enough. The anger she wasn't allowed to express. The confusion of not knowing who she truly is. The terror of abandonment. The shame of immaturity. The sadness of wasted years. The grief of unrealized potential. And the worst of all, the fear that she is fundamentally alone, fundamentally behind, fundamentally broken. But here's what she doesn't understand: her shadow is not her enemy. It is her doorway to freedom. Everything she wants, authentic love, meaningful work, grounded confidence, lives on the other side of the pain she avoids. Because the shadow she hides is not a monster. It is the part of her that has been waiting to be seen, heard, and held for the first time. Marie-Louise von Franz said something brutal and true: when a woman refuses to grow, the psyche punishes her. This punishment is not cruelty. It is a wake-up call. The emptiness she feels is a signal. The anxiety is a warning. The cycles are feedback. The loneliness is an invitation. The breakdown is a breakthrough trying to happen. The suffering is not random. It is her unconscious begging her to stop performing and start living. Let me ask you something real. Have you ever felt that the life you show others is not the life you actually live? Have you ever felt a sadness you cannot explain, even when everything looks fine on the outside? Have you ever felt that you are always running from choices, from love, from responsibility, from yourself? If the answer is yes, don't run from this section. Because you are standing at the exact doorway the eternal girl avoids her whole life, the doorway to truth. And the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, is the beginning of freedom. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that running is no longer an option. The fantasy stops working. The old charm stops protecting. The distractions lose their flavor. The eternal girl inside her begins to feel less like a friend and more like a ghost, haunting her, pulling her backward, holding her hostage to a life that feels smaller every year. And when that moment comes, something incredible happens. The woman begins to hear another voice. Not the voice of the girl who wants to be saved, but the voice of the woman who is ready to rise. This is the moment when the queen archetype awakens. Now let's be clear, becoming the queen is not about power over others. It's not about dominance, control, or perfection. It's about inner authority. It's about knowing yourself so deeply that no external approval can shake your foundation. It's about becoming rooted, centered, grounded, a woman who doesn't wait for the right moment because she creates the moment. A woman who doesn't chase love because she embodies love. A woman who doesn't ask for permission to exist because she owns her existence. And if the eternal girl is the archetype of potential, the queen is the archetype of embodiment. She is the woman who steps into her life fully, intentionally, consciously. But the transformation between these two archetypes doesn't happen overnight. It is not a glow-up. It is not a mindset shift. It is not one trip to a yoga retreat or a few pages in a self-help journal. This transformation is deep, raw, slow, and sacred. It requires you to cross the psychological desert you've spent your life avoiding. It requires you to meet the parts of yourself you've been running from. It requires courage, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet, consistent kind that shows up every day and says, "I'm done abandoning myself." Jung called this the process of individuation, becoming who you truly are instead of who you learn to pretend to be. It is the journey from image to essence, from performance to presence. And the first step in that journey is recognition. You cannot change what you refuse to see. You cannot grow if you deny the ways you've stayed small. You cannot become the queen if you're still protecting the girl inside you from reality. So let me ask you something honest. What would happen if you stopped running? What would happen if you stopped waiting for someone to choose you? What would happen if you planted your feet on the ground and said, "This is my life, and I'm ready to live it fully"? Because that is the moment the queen is born, not in the fantasy, not in the future, not in the idealized version of your life, but right here, in the present, in the decision to take responsibility for every part of your existence. Responsibility is not punishment. Responsibility is liberation. The eternal girl thinks responsibility will cage her, but in truth, responsibility frees her. It frees her from dependence on others. It frees her from indecision. It frees her from waiting for signs, miracles, or approval. It frees her from the illusion that someone else will save her. When you take responsibility for your life, you reclaim your agency. You reclaim your voice. You reclaim your power. And this power doesn't come from perfection. It comes from wholeness. The queen is not afraid of the shadow because she has faced it. She is not afraid of commitment because she understands the value of grounding. She is not afraid of aging because she knows her worth is not tied to youth. She is not afraid of loss because she trusts her ability to rebuild. She doesn't ask, "Will someone love me?" She asks, "Do I love the life I'm choosing?" She doesn't ask, "What if I choose wrong?" She asks, "What if not choosing is the biggest mistake?" Marie-Louise von Franz said that healing begins when a woman commits to something outside her fantasies, real work, real love, real purpose. This commitment is the bridge between the eternal girl and the queen. It is the moment you stop searching for the perfect path and choose your path. It is the moment you stop waiting for clarity and create clarity by acting. It is the moment you stop living as a symbol and start living as a full human being. Think about the woman you could become if you stopped postponing your life. Think about the career you could build if you chose one direction and nurtured it. Think about the relationship you could have if you stopped running the moment things became real. Think about the peace you could feel if you stopped fighting time and started partnering with it. Think about the freedom that would come from finally saying, "I choose to be the adult in my own story." The queen doesn't reject the eternal girl, she integrates her. She keeps the girl's playfulness, creativity, and hope, but she removes the fear, the avoidance, the fantasy. She becomes the woman who can love deeply without losing herself, work steadily without burning out, create boldly without collapsing, and age gracefully without fear. She is strong not because life is easy for her, but because she no longer hides from its challenges. She shows up. She stands tall. She leads herself. So ask yourself now, are you ready to step out of the endless rehearsal and onto the real stage of your life? Are you ready to stop performing and start living? Are you ready to stop being an extra in your own movie and finally take the lead role? The eternal girl waits for someone to save her. The queen saves herself. And if you feel something inside you shifting, even slightly, pay attention. Because that feeling is not fear. It is awakening. It is the first spark of your inner authority. It is the whisper of the woman you were always meant to become. She has been waiting. And now, perhaps for the first time, you are finally ready to meet her. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I know your time is valuable. If this message spoke to you, if it gave you even one moment of clarity or peace, I'd be grateful if you'd let me know. A simple like, a comment with your thoughts, or subscribing to the channel helps this community grow, and it helps more people who might need these words to find them. Share your reflections below, I do read them. I'll see you in the next chapter. Until then, take care of your peace.